Lyra Blackwood wiped the crystalline dust from her visor as she descended deeper into the ruins of Epsilon Eridani 4. The planet's twin moons cast an ethereal silver light through the ancient crystal dome above, creating dancing patterns on the weathered walls of what had once been a grand hall. After 3 months of excavating this site, she still couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking through a dream. The alien architecture defied conventional geometry. Spiraling columns supported impossible arches, and what appeared to be solid walls rippled like water when viewed from certain angles. Her team had dubbed it quantum architecture, though none of them truly understood how it worked. But today, Lyra wasn't here for the architecture. Her quantum resonance scanner pulsed steadily, tracking an energy signature unlike anything they'd detected before. The reading had appeared suddenly during their routine survey, as if something deep within the ruins had awakened from a long slumber. "Control, are you getting these readings?" she spoke into her comm unit, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Affirmative, Dr. Blackwood," came the response from her research vessel in orbit. "Energy signature is stable but unlike anything in our database. Exercise extreme caution." Lyra smiled beneath her visor. "When don't I?" She followed the scanner's guidance through a series of increasingly narrow corridors. The walls here were different, smoother, more purposeful in their design. As she progressed, she noticed subtle patterns emerging in the crystalline surfaces, pulsing with a faint blue luminescence that seemed to respond to her presence. The passage opened into a circular chamber that took her breath away. Unlike the weather-worn ruins above, this room appeared perfectly preserved. A dozen crystalline pillars surrounded a central platform, each emitting a soft, pulsing light that synchronized with her heartbeat. But it was what lay on the platform that made her stop in her tracks. A transparent sarcophagus, if you could call it that, dominated the center of the room. Its surface was flawless, like liquid glass frozen in time. Inside, suspended in what appeared to be a pearlescent fluid, was a humanoid figure. Lyra approached carefully, her scanner forgotten at her side. The being inside was remarkably human-like, save for the iridescent patterns that swirled across their skin like living tattoos. Their features were elegant, almost ethereal, and their long hair floated around them like a dark nebula. "Control, are you seeing this?" she whispered, her helmet camera transmitting everything back to the ship. "Affirmative," came the response, noticeably tenser than before. "Dr. Blackwood, protocol dictates immediate withdrawal and quarantine procedures for any discovery of preserved biological material." Lyra barely heard them. She was studying the control panel beside the sarcophagus, where symbols pulsed with the same rhythm as the pillars. As she watched, the symbols began to shift, rearranging themselves into patterns she could almost understand. "It's some kind of stasis chamber," she muttered, more to herself than to Control. "The technology is incredible. It's not just preservation, it's complete temporal suspension. Dr. Blackwood, please acknowledge withdrawal order." Her hand hovered over the panel. The symbols had settled into a clear pattern now, and something in her mind clicked. It wasn't just a stasis chamber, it was a message, waiting for someone to understand it. "I don't think they were waiting to be found," she said softly. "They were waiting for someone who could wake them. Dr. Blackwood, do not." She placed her hand on the panel. The crystal surface was warm to the touch, and the symbols beneath her palm flared with brilliant light. The chamber hummed to life, the pearlescent fluid beginning to drain away from the figure within. The being's chest rose and fell with their first breath in what Lyra's calculations suggested had been over 5 centuries. Their eyes opened, revealing irises that shifted color like aurora borealis. "I am Lyra Blackwood," she said, removing her helmet as the chamber opened with a soft hiss. "I'm a scientist from Earth." The beings sat up with impossible grace, their iridescent patterns glowing brighter as they studied her. When they spoke, their voice was like music given form. "I am Nerian Vath, last keeper of the celestial archives." They tilted their head, those aurora eyes seeming to peer into Lyra's very soul. Tell me, Lyra Blackwood of Earth, how far have your people ventured among the stars? We've colonized dozens of systems, Lyra replied, fighting to maintain her professional composure despite her racing heart. We've made contact with several other spacefaring species, established trade routes, cultural exchanges. Nerian raised a hand, the patterns on their skin pulsing with increased intensity. Then perhaps there is still hope. They attempted to stand but stumbled, their muscles weak from centuries of disuse. Lyra caught them instinctively. The moment their skin touched, Lyra felt a jolt of energy course through her body. Images flooded her mind, vast cities of living crystal, ships that sailed on light itself, and a terrible darkness that consumed it all. I apologize, Nerian said, steadying themselves but not pulling away from Lyra's support. My people's memory sharing can be overwhelming for those unprepared. But time is short, and there is much you need to understand. Above them, the crystal dome suddenly darkened, and Lyra's comm unit erupted with urgent signals. Dr. Blackwood, multiple vessels just emerged from FTL at the system's edge. Configuration unknown, but they're on an intercept course. Nerian's expression hardened, their aurora eyes darkening to storm cloud gray. The hunters. They still survive, after all these centuries. They turned to Lyra, their grip on her arm tightening. Your discovery of me has put you in terrible danger, Lyra Blackwood. What I protect cannot fall into their hands. Then we better make sure it doesn't, Lyra replied, her scientific curiosity transforming into determination. My ship is fast, and I'm pretty good at getting out of tight spots. For the first time, Nerian smiled, their patterns creating a mesmerizing display of light. Perhaps the universe chose well in sending you to wake me, Lyra Blackwood of Earth. As if in response to their words, the entire chamber began to pulse with energy, the quantum architecture coming alive around them. The hunt was about to begin. The crystalline corridors of the ancient complex hummed with awakening power as Lyra and Nerian raced through them. Each step they took caused ripples of light to spread across the walls, as if the very structure recognized its long-lost keeper. Nerian moved with increasing confidence, their initial weakness fading as their body fully awakened from stasis. My ship's docked in a cavern 2 kilometers north, Lyra said, checking her wrist display. But these energy signatures are going to lead them right to us. Nerian's aurora eyes flickered with calculation. The archive systems are reactivating. They recognize my presence, I can use that. They pressed their palm against a seemingly solid wall, their iridescent patterns flaring. The wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a hidden passage. The maintenance tunnels. My people built redundancies into everything. They ducked inside just as distant explosions rocked the complex. The passage sealed behind them, leaving them in a tunnel lit only by Nerian's bioluminescent patterns and Lyra's suit lights. Your pursuers, Lyra began as they moved swiftly through the tunnel, they're from your time? The Void Hunters, Nerian's voice carried ancient pain. Once, they were our protectors, an order dedicated to preserving our civilization's boundaries. But power corrupts, and knowledge. They paused, their patterns dimming. Knowledge can be the most dangerous power of all. The tunnel opened into what appeared to be a control center, its surfaces covered in the same quantum-shifting symbols Lyra had seen in the stasis chamber. Nerian moved to a central console, their hands dancing across its surface with practiced familiarity. The archives weren't just repositories of information, they explained as they worked. They were the collective memory of my people, the Lumini. Every discovery, every advancement, every mistake, all preserved in living crystal matrices. Holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing scenes from a civilization that took Lyra's breath away. Cities that grew like crystal gardens, ships that wove themselves from light and thought, beings of pure energy walking among corporeal forms. The hunters believed such power should be controlled, regulated, Nerian continued, their voice hardening. When they discovered our research into consciousness transfer and temporal manipulation, they declared the archives corrupted. The purge began shortly after. More explosions, closer now. Lyra's comm crackled with urgent transmissions from her ship, reporting multiple hostile vessels entering the atmosphere. How did they find us so quickly? They never stopped watching. Nerian's hands moved faster across the console. For centuries, they've maintained automated sentinels throughout this sector of space, waiting for any sign of archive activity. My awakening might as well have been a beacon. Lyra processed this as she checked her weapons, standard archaeological security measures that suddenly seemed woefully inadequate. What exactly are we up against? The hunters were enhanced. Cybernetically, genetically, psychically. They sacrificed their connection to the collective consciousness for what they saw as perfection. Nerian's patterns shifted to darker hues. They're stronger, faster, and utterly devoted to their cause. And they've had centuries to evolve their modifications. A new explosion, much closer, sent crystalline dust raining from the ceiling. Nerian suddenly stepped back from the console, their eyes wide with something close to fear. They're not just here to eliminate me, they whispered. They're here to harvest the archive. They think they've finally developed the technology to extract and control it. And that would be bad, I'm guessing? The archive is alive, Lyra. It's a collective consciousness spanning millions of years of evolution and advancement. In the wrong hands. They shuddered. The hunters would use it to reshape reality according to their vision of purity. Lyra's scientific mind raced with implications. Then we need to make sure that doesn't happen. But first, we need to get out of here alive. She pulled up the tunnel map on her wrist display. The cavern with my ship is. She was cut off by a sound that seemed to tear through reality itself, a high-pitched harmonic that made the crystal walls vibrate. Nerian's patterns flashed in alarm. They're using resonance weapons. They'll bring down the entire complex to flush us out. Their eyes met Lyra's. The archive. I can't let them take it. But I can't destroy it either. It's the last memory of my people. Lyra made a decision. Upload it. What? Your people developed consciousness transfer technology, right? Upload the archive. Not all of it, we don't have time. But take what's most important. Nerian stared at her. The only viable receiver within range would be me. Lyra tapped her neural interface, standard equipment for xenoarchaeologists. It's primitive compared to your tech, but it should work as a temporary storage medium. Lyra, you don't understand. This would create a permanent connection. The archive would become part of you. The knowledge, the memories, they would change you forever. Another explosion rocked the chamber. Through her comm, Lyra could hear the hunters breaching the upper levels. We're out of options, she said firmly. And I'm pretty good at keeping secrets. For a moment, Nerian was still. Then their patterns began to glow with an intensity that filled the chamber. They placed their hands on either side of Lyra's face, their touch electric. Your trust honors us, they said softly. I hope we prove worthy of it. The world exploded into light and knowledge as the heart of an ancient civilization began to flow into Lyra's mind. The hunt had just become something far more complex than a simple chase. The knowledge burned. Lyra stumbled as ancient memories cascaded through her consciousness, birth of stars, death of civilizations, secrets that could reshape reality itself. Nerian caught her, their touch acting as an anchor to the present. Focus on my voice, they commanded, their aurora eyes intense. The archive is adapting to your neural architecture. Don't fight it, let it settle naturally. A blast of resonance energy sheared through the wall behind them, the crystal structure screaming as it shattered. Through the breach stepped three figures that seemed to defy natural law. Their bodies were a perfect fusion of organic matter and crystalline technology, their movements liquid smooth. Where eyes should have been, they had faceted gems that gleamed with cold intelligence. The last keeper, the central hunter's voice resonated on multiple frequencies simultaneously. And, interesting. You found a human vessel for the archive. Primitive, but workable. Nerian's patterns flared with protective fury. You've already destroyed one civilization seeking this power. I won't let you destroy another. The hunter's crystalline eyes pulsed. The archive's power was never meant for lesser beings. We are its rightful inheritors. The human's neural structure will collapse within hours, better to let us extract it cleanly. Lyra straightened, fighting through the disorientation as fragments of archive knowledge clicked into place. Funny thing about humans, she managed, her hand finding a particular crystal shard on the ground. We're really good at adapting. She hurled the shard at the nearest power conduit, knowledge from the archive guiding her aim perfectly. The crystal resonated with the conduit's frequency, creating a cascade of energy that exploded outward. The hunter's crystalline components amplified the feedback, momentarily overwhelming their systems. Run! Lyra grabbed Nerian's hand and they bolted through the opposite passage. Behind them, she could hear the hunters recovering with inhuman speed. The archive, Nerian said as they ran. It's showing you things? Flashes. Fragments. Like trying to drink from a fire hose made of memories. Lyra winced as another wave of knowledge surged through her mind. Did you know your people once built a Dyson sphere out of living crystal? Focus on the present, Nerian advised, though Lyra caught their faint smile. Your ship, can it outrun them? Better. They rounded a corner into a vast cavern where Lyra's ship waited, a sleek vessel that seemed almost primitive compared to the ancient architecture around it. It can outsmart them. They sprinted across the cavern floor as resonance blasts tore through the air around them. Lyra's neural interface connected with the ship's systems, starting the engine warm-up sequence before they even reached the airlock. Inside, Lyra threw herself into the pilot's seat while Nerian took the co-pilot position with surprising familiarity. The ship's displays came alive under their hands. Quantum engines online, Lyra announced, her fingers dancing across the controls. Inertial dampeners at maximum. Hold on to something, this is going to get interesting. Through the viewport, they could see the hunters emerging into the cavern, their crystalline components glowing with gathered power. The central hunter raised a hand, energy coalescing around them. Lyra fired the main engines at full thrust, but not toward the cavern's exit. Instead, she aimed straight at the crystalline ceiling. Trust me, she said before Nerian could object. The archive is showing me something about harmonic resonance. Understanding dawned in Nerian's aurora eyes. Their patterns synchronized with the ship's energy output, creating a feedback loop that amplified their power signature. The hunter's energy blast struck their shields just as Lyra engaged the quantum drive. The combination of energies, hunter weapon, ship's drive, and Nerian's resonance, created a cascading reaction in the crystal structure of the cavern. Reality seemed to fold around them as Lyra's ship phased through the solid ceiling, leaving the hunters behind in a collapsing chamber. They burst into the atmosphere, the ship's hull screaming as Lyra pushed it beyond its designed limits. 3 hunter vessels immediately moved to intercept, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the twin sunlight. They're faster than us in a straight run, Lyra noted, her mind processing tactical data from both her training and the archive's memories. So let's not run straight. She dove toward the planet's rings, a dense field of crystal fragments left over from an ancient cataclysm. The hunter ships followed, their superior technology allowing them to close the gap with every passing second. The rings, Nerian said suddenly, their patterns pulsing with revelation. They're not just debris, they're fragments of the original archive network. Lyra nodded, archive knowledge merging with her pilot's instincts. And every piece still holds an echo of its original programming. Want to wake them up? Nerian's patterns brightened with fierce joy. They placed their hands on the ship's control panel, channeling their energy into its systems. Lyra felt the archive within her mind resonate with the effort, adding her own connection to the ancient technology. The ring field came alive around them, countless crystal fragments lighting up like stars as they recognized the presence of their keeper. As the hunter ships entered the field, the fragments responded to Nerian's call, creating a swirling maze of crystalline chaos that their pursuers couldn't predict or navigate. "We still need a way out of the system," Lyra said, expertly weaving through the evolving crystal patterns. "They'll have reinforcements coming." "The archive is showing you something else, isn't it?" Nerian asked, noting her expression. "Something about the ring's original purpose?" Lyra smiled, archive knowledge crystallizing into a plan. "How do you feel about using a 500,000-year-old teleportation network that was never meant for ships this size?" "About as good as I feel about being downloaded into a human neural interface," Nerian replied with a matching smile. "Do it." Lyra banked the ship toward a particularly dense cluster of crystal fragments, her mind and the archive working in perfect synchronization. Behind them, the hunter ships struggled to navigate the chaos of the awakened ring field, their weapons' fire dissipating harmlessly against the swirling crystal barriers. "By the way," she added as they approached the cluster, "we should probably talk about why I'm starting to understand your people's native language." "After we survive this," Nerian promised, their patterns creating complex geometries of light that seemed to match the calculations running through Lyra's enhanced consciousness. The crystal cluster ahead began to resonate with accumulated power, forming a pattern that hadn't been seen in 500,000 years. As they flew toward what looked like certain collision, Lyra felt the archive pulse within her mind, accepting her as more than just a temporary vessel. The universe bent around them, and the hunt entered a new phase. Reality snapped back into focus as their ship emerged from the ancient teleportation network. Lyra's consciousness swam with the aftermath of their impossible journey, new archive memories mixing with the vertigo of faster-than-light travel. "Navigation's offline," she managed, trying to orient herself. "Did we make it?" Nerian was already interfacing with the ship's sensors, their patterns flowing with data. "We're in the Carina Nebula. The crystal network transported us nearly 2,000 light-years." They paused, their aurora eyes widening. "To a very specific location." Through the viewport, a massive structure became visible through the nebula's cosmic gases, a floating city of living crystal, long abandoned but still intact. Its spiraling towers and quantum-locked architecture dwarfed their ship, making it look like a minnow approaching a sleeping leviathan. "The fourth archive," Nerian breathed, their patterns shifting with complex emotions. "One of our greatest achievements, and our last sanctuary." Lyra felt the archive within her mind resonate with the site, unlocking new streams of knowledge. "Your people built it as a fallback position. A place to preserve your civilization if the worst happened. Yet we never reached it." Nerian's voice carried centuries of grief. "The hunter's attack came too quickly. Those of us who survived were scattered, forced into hiding. I always wondered if any others made it here." They docked at an ancient terminal that automatically activated at their approach. As they stepped out of the ship, the city systems began to wake, responding to both Nerian's presence and the archive's energy signature within Lyra. The vast docking bay was a cathedral of crystal and light, its surfaces coming alive with flowing data as ancient systems reactivated. Lyra stumbled, overwhelmed by another surge of archive information. "Your neural pathways are adapting faster than should be possible," Nerian observed, catching her with gentle hands. "The archive isn't just storing itself in your mind, it's evolving with you." "Is that why I can see the data flows?" Lyra asked, watching patterns of light that she somehow knew contained the city's operating protocols. "Why I'm starting to understand your people's quantum mathematics." "The human brain is remarkably plastic," Nerian said, their patterns synchronizing with her neural rhythms in a way that brought clarity to the chaos. Your ability to form new neural connections, to adapt to new information, it's unprecedented in our experience. A distant boom echoed through the structure, causing the crystal walls to vibrate. Nerian's patterns flared with alarm. "They're here," they said grimly. The network was too obvious a path. They'd have followed our quantum wake. Lyra straightened, archive knowledge combining with tactical training. "Then let's use that. This whole city is one giant archive node, isn't it? We can access its defense systems." "No." Nerian's tone was sharp with fear. "The city's defensive capabilities, they're too powerful. In your current state, interfacing with them could overwhelm your consciousness completely." "The hunters are coming," Lyra argued, even as another explosion rocked the structure. "We need every advantage. I won't lose you." Nerian's patterns flashed with intensity as they gripped her shoulders. "Not when I've finally found someone who—" They trailed off, their aurora eyes swirling with emotions too complex for words. Understanding dawned in Lyra's mind, archive memories providing context she hadn't had before. The intimacy of sharing consciousness, of trusting another being with the very essence of one's civilization, in Lumini culture, it went beyond mere physical connection. "You're not going to lose me," she said softly, reaching up to trace the patterns on Nerian's face. They glowed brighter at her touch, resonating with the archive's energy within her. "But I'm not going to let them destroy everything your people fought to preserve. Everything you sacrificed to protect." The moment was broken by the sound of crystal shattering in the distance. The hunters were breaching the city's outer defenses. "There's a third option," Nerian said suddenly, their patterns shifting with new purpose. "The archive within you, it's not just storing information. It's creating something new. A hybrid of human intuition and Lumini quantum consciousness." "What are you suggesting?" The city's defensive systems were designed for pure Lumini consciousness. The hunters could never use them because their cybernetic modifications made them incompatible. "But you—" Their aurora eyes blazed with hope. "Your human adaptability combined with the archive's evolution within you, you might be able to interface with the systems in a completely new way." More explosions, closer now. Through the archive's connection to the city, Lyra could sense the hunters advancing through multiple levels, their crystalline forms corrupting the ancient architecture as they passed. "It's still dangerous," Nerian warned. "We'd be attempting something that's never been done before. Merging human, archive, and city consciousness." Lyra smiled, feeling the archive pulse with approval at her decision. "Humanity's greatest strength? We're really good at trying the impossible." They moved deeper into the city, toward its quantum core. The archive within Lyra's mind seemed to sing as they approached, resonating with the vast energies contained within the ancient structure. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew closer as the hunters methodically penetrated each layer of defense. In the core chamber, streams of pure quantum data flowed like rivers of light between crystalline pillars that stretched beyond sight. The very air hummed with potential energy. Lyra could feel the city's consciousness brushing against her mind, curious about this hybrid being that carried its creator's legacy. "Once we begin," Nerian said as they helped her into the interface cradle, "there's no going back. The merger will be permanent." Lyra caught their hand, feeling the energy patterns beneath their skin synchronize with her own. "Some things are worth the risk." As the hunters breached the final defenses, Lyra closed her eyes and opened her mind to the city's quantum consciousness. The archive within her exploded into new dimensions of awareness, and the true battle for humanity's role in the cosmic order began. The universe exploded into infinite dimensions of consciousness as Lyra merged with the city's quantum core. The archive within her acted as a bridge, translating the vast streams of data into patterns her human mind could comprehend. She was everywhere at once, flowing through the crystalline architecture, seeing through every facet, existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Through it all, Nerian's presence anchored her, their patterns a constant harmony in the overwhelming symphony of information. Their consciousness brushed against hers in the quantum field, intimate and supportive. "They've reached the central chamber," Nerian's voice echoed both physically and mentally. 5 hunters, no, 6. Their crystalline augmentations have evolved far beyond what we knew. Lyra could see them through the city's sensors, beings of organic crystal, their forms twisted by centuries of modification in their quest for perfection. They moved like liquid mercury through the ancient halls, their presence corrupting the pure crystalline matrices around them. "You're too late." The lead hunter's multitonal voice reverberated through the chamber as they breached the final door. "The human consciousness is already fragmenting. Soon, the archive will have no choice but to seek a more suitable vessel." Lyra opened her eyes, still connected to the quantum network. Streams of energy flowed around her like auroral lights, responding to her thoughts. "You know, for advanced beings, you make a lot of assumptions about human capabilities." She could feel the archive changing her, but not in the way the hunters predicted. Instead of overwhelming her consciousness, it was adapting to her uniquely human way of processing information. Where Lumini minds thought in pure quantum mathematics, she thought in metaphors and intuitive leaps. The combination was creating something entirely new. "Impossible," the hunter leader hissed, their crystalline eyes fracturing with confusion as they scanned her quantum signature. "The energy patterns, they're stabilizing." "That's humanity's gift," Nerian declared proudly, their patterns blazing. "They don't break under pressure, they evolve." Lyra stretched her awareness through the city's systems, feeling its ancient defenses respond to her commands. But instead of the rigid protocols the hunters expected, she reshaped the quantum energies instinctively, like a musician riffing on an ancient composition. The hunters attacked simultaneously, their crystalline forms channeling devastating amounts of energy. But Lyra was already moving in ways they couldn't predict, using the city's quantum field like an extension of her own body. Where they expected logical sequences of defense protocols, she gave them improvisation. "The archive wasn't meant to be a weapon," she said, redirecting their energy attacks through crystalline prisms that scattered them harmlessly. "It was meant to preserve and create. You forgot that when you chose destruction over evolution." "The archive's power cannot be controlled by lesser beings," the hunter leader snarled, their form shifting into something increasingly inhuman. "We are its rightful inheritors." "You still don't understand," Nerian said, their patterns interweaving with Lyra's quantum field. "The archive doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be understood. To grow. To change." Lyra felt the truth of it in every quantum particle of her enhanced consciousness. The archive wasn't just knowledge to be preserved, it was a living legacy meant to evolve with each new civilization it encountered. Her humanity wasn't a weakness, it was exactly what the archive had been waiting for. She opened herself fully to the quantum network, letting the archive's power flow through her in ways the hunters had never imagined possible. The city responded to her transformed consciousness, its crystalline architecture reshaping itself according to patterns that were neither purely human nor Lumini, but something gloriously new. The hunters found themselves trapped in a crystalline maze that operated on principles their logic couldn't comprehend. Their attempts to corrupt the system failed as Lyra's hybrid consciousness adapted faster than their modifications could process. "Your choice," Lyra offered, her voice resonating with harmonics of human compassion and Lumini power. "Surrender and evolve, or remain trapped in your own rigid perfection. We cannot be contained." The hunter leader's form erupted with desperate energy, their crystalline components reaching critical resonance. "If we cannot claim the archive, we will destroy." But Lyra had already seen this possibility through the archive's quantum predictions. The crystal maze shifted, channeling the hunter's destructive energy back upon itself. Their forms began to crystallize completely, transformation accelerating beyond their control. "What did you do to them?" Nerian asked, watching as their pursuers became perfect crystalline statues, their consciousness trapped in an endless loop of their own making. Gave them exactly what they wanted, Lyra said softly. Perfect, unchanging crystalline form. They can spend eternity contemplating the price of fearing change. She began disconnecting from the quantum network, letting her consciousness settle back into more human patterns, though now permanently altered by the archive's integration. Nerian caught her as she stepped out of the interface cradle, their patterns synchronizing automatically with her new quantum signature. The archive within you, they said wonderingly, it's completely stable. But different, evolved. Lyra smiled, feeling the warm hum of ancient knowledge and now perfectly meshed with her human intuition. It found what it was looking for, a way to grow beyond its original programming. Just like humanity did when we reached the stars. And now? Nerian's aurora eyes searched hers, their patterns shifting with possibilities. Now we have a city full of quantum technology, an evolved archive of ancient knowledge, and a universe full of civilizations that could benefit from both. She reached up to trace their luminescent patterns, feeling the energy respond to her touch. Plus, I believe you mentioned something about Lumini customs regarding life debts? Nerian's patterns bloomed with joy and amusement. The customs are quite extensive. It could take years to properly observe them all. Good thing we have time. Lyra's new quantum senses could feel the city awakening around them, ready to become a beacon of knowledge and evolution once again. After all, we have a new civilization to build. Above them, through the crystal dome of the chamber, the Carina Nebula painted the quantum sky in colors only their shared vision could truly see. It was a new dawn for both their peoples, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of what would come next.